I want to start today with a code. It's a string of characters that looks a little bit like a Wi-Fi password. N1B1A2 meter.
It is a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. But if you're listening to this deep dive, there's a good chance that code is on a report sitting on your desk, or maybe it's open in a tab on your phone right now.
And it looks like a serial number, but it's a biological address.
Right. It's the specific name for your branch on the human family tree.
But branch almost feels too static. It's more of a map, really. A map of a journey your direct maternal line has been on for thousands and thousands of years.
And that's exactly what we're doing today.
Yeah.
We aren't just reading a report. We're going to treat this code N1B1A2 like a time machine.
We're going to trace this line of women from your mother to her mother all the way back.
All the way back to the Ice Age.
And the story here is just fascinating because it's not the usual narrative of, conquest and huge migrations. It's a story of continuity.
Continuity.
Yeah. It's about the people who stayed put, the ones who built the foundations of civilization while the world was changing all around them.
So we've got a roadmap with three, I think, incredibly vivid stops. We're going to start in a cave in Israel about 14,000 years ago.
To watch the invention of home.
Then we jump to a palace in the biblical city of Armageddon.
And for the finale, a plot twist. Just when you think this is a purely Middle Eastern story, we take a detour.
To a medieval Christian kingdom.
Yeah,
in Sudan.
Exactly.
So let's get into it. Let's decode N1B1A2 meter.
Let's do it.
Okay, so to understand where this string of letters comes from, we have to zoom way, way out first. We need that deep time context. So where does the N come from?
N is what we call a macrohaplogroup. The simplest way to think about it is it's one of the two massive trunks of the family tree for pretty much everyone whose ancestors left Africa.
Okay, so humanity starts in Africa. A few groups leave. And N is one of those main lines that exits.
Exactly. Somewhere around, say, 50,000 to 70,000 years ago, you have this major expansion, the out of Africa moment. And Macrohaplogroup N probably emerges somewhere in South or Southwest Asia not long after that.
So N is the grandmother of almost every maternal line in Eurasia.
That's right. And if N is the trunk of the tree, our code N1B1AA2S is a very specific twig.
A twig.
But before we get to the twig, you have the branch. About 30,000, maybe 40,000 years ago, a smaller group breaks off. That's the N1 lineage.
And while other groups are heading off into Europe to hunt mammoths?
Or east into Asia, the N1 group makes a very different choice.
They stop.
They settle in. They decide the Near East, the Levant, is the place to be. And this is really the first key takeaway for you. Your lineage is deeply, profoundly rooted right there. They weren't later arrivals. They were there when the lights came on.
And we know this not just from models, but because archaeologists actually found one of them.
We did. This is the big aha moment. For this, we have to go to Mount Carmel in modern-day Israel, specifically to a site called Rakafet Cave.
Okay, so paint a picture for us. 14,000 years ago, the Ice Age is ending. What's life like for the woman in this cave?
Well, this is the Upper Paleolithic period, and the people living here are called the Natufians. And I really can't stress this enough. The Natufians they're archaeological celebrities.
Why is that?
Because they basically broke the rules of human existence up to that point.
How so?
Well, before them, for hundreds of thousands of years, humans were nomadic. You move, you hunt, you gather, you move again. Simple. The Natufians were the first to say, actually, we're going to stay here. They were sedentary foragers.
That sounds like a contradiction in terms. Foraging means looking for food, and sedentary means staying still.
It is a paradox. But the Levant at that time was so lush, so full of wild gazelles and pistachios and wild cereals, that they could build permanent stone houses without even inventing farming yet.
So they're living in this Garden of Eden scenario.
Pretty much. They had enough natural abundance that they didn't need to roam. And inside Rakafet Caves, right in the middle of this revolution, researchers found human remains. And when they sequenced the DNA...
They found N1B.
Yes, your direct maternal ancestor.
That is wild. So the woman who gave rise to your lineage was literally there thousands of years before agriculture was officially a thing.
She was right at the tipping point. They were experimenting with everything, processing grains, maybe brewing an early form of beer.
A very important step for civilization.
Of course. And they were burying their dead on beds of flowers. They were inventing the whole concept of home.
So if you carry this lineage, you're not descended from people who adopted farming. You're descended from the people who invented the lifestyle that made farming possible in the first place.
That's the distinction. It's an indigenous Levantine lineage. It anchors you to that land more deeply than almost any historical record could.
You are local to the cradle of civilization.
But they didn't stay in the cave forever, obviously. The experiment worked. The population grew. And that brings us to our second stop. We're jumping forward about 10,000 years.
Okay.
We are leaving the Stone Age and entering the Bronze Age. Specifically, around 1750 BCE.
And we're going to tell Megiddo.
Or, as most people know it from its biblical name, Armageddon.
Which, brings to mind the end of the world. But back then, this place was a metropolis.
It was the New York City of the Canaanite world. It controlled the main trade route connecting Egypt and Mesopotamia. If you controlled Megiddo, you were a superpower.
We're talking palaces, temples.
Oh, yeah. Giant mud brick ramparts, huge palaces, stables. It was a proper cosmopolitan hub.
Mm-hmm.
And in a tomb connected to one of these elite residences, archaeologists found sample I-1092.
A woman
of very high status. Based on the gravebed's gold jewelry, she was part of the 1%, and her lineage was N1B1A2.
So your ancestors were VIPs in Armageddon. But the research highlighted something really specific about her DNA, didn't it? Compared to her neighbors.
Yes, and this is the second major insight. The Bronze Age was a globalizing world. People were moving all over. And when we look at the DNA of other elites in Megiddo, we see a lot of foreign DNA.
Foreign from where?
From the Caucasus.
Yeah.
Modern-day Armenia, Georgia. Way up north.
So the powerful men in the city, or at least the people they were marrying, were coming from hundreds of miles away.
Exactly. It points to a system of exogamy marrying outside your group to create alliances. The rulers of Megiddo were bringing in outsiders to solidify their power. It's classic royal politics.
But not our N1B1A2 woman.
No. Her DNA was described as quintessentially local. It was a mix of that local Levantine Neolithic, those cave dwellers we just talked about, and a bit of Iranian Chalcolithic, which had been in the area for millennia.
So while all these foreign political alliances were being made, this maternal line just stayed.
It held the center. This tells us that while empires rose and fell, while Egyptians and Hittites marched through Megiddo, this specific family line managed to maintain its position, its identity.
It's a powerful idea. The world comes to Armageddon, but this lineage is Armageddon. They're the bedrock.
Precisely. They represent the stability of the Canaanite population. They weren't the newcomers, they were the establishment.
But eventually, even the bedrock shakes. The Bronze Age collapses. The Jewish diaspora begins. And this lineage, after staying put for 10,000 years, starts to scatter.
And this is where the story branches out. N1B1A2 becomes a very distinct signal in Jewish populations moving into Europe and North Africa.
We see it in Ashkenazi populations, right?
We do, but it's a specific kind of signal. It's what we call a minor founder lineage.
Okay, break that down for me. What's that mean?
Well, about 40% of all Ashkenazi Jews descend maternally from just 4 women. 4 major lineages. N1B1A2 isn't one of the big 4. It's much rarer, maybe 0.06% of the population.
So it was there at the founding of the Ashkenazi community in Europe, but it just didn't have that same massive population boom.
Exactly. It survived the genetic bottleneck, but it stayed a bit more exclusive. But there is this fascinating whisper in some of the medical data about this lineage.
The biomedical whisper. I was curious about this part.
Yeah. Now, we have to be really careful here. This is correlation, not causation, and your nuclear DNA is what really drives most health outcomes.
Right. Don't cancel your doctor's appointment based on this.
Please don't. But some studies looking at type 2 diabetes have noticed that carriers of N1B1 seem to have a slightly lower incidence of certain complications, like kidney disease.
So it's like a faint biological shield.
It's a statistical anomaly, but it's an intriguing one. It hints that maybe, just maybe, this lineage carried some tiny advantage that helped these women survive difficult conditions over the centuries.
So not only is it rare, it might be tough.
It's definitely persistent.
But the survival story that really reads like a movie script wasn't in the medical journals. It was in Portugal.
Ah, the Bragança connection. This is one of my favorite bits of genetic detective work. It's absolutely gripping.
So, set the scene. We're in northeastern Portugal, in the Bragança region.
Researchers were sampling the modern population. Now, usually, Portuguese DNA has a pretty standard Western European profile.
But they found this little pocket of women carrying N1B1A2.
And its sister clade, N1B1A5. Both clearly Near Eastern lineages. And here's the kicker. These lineages are completely absent in the general non-Jewish population of Spain and Portugal.
So they stick out like a sore thumb.
A huge one. And when the researchers looked into the family histories of these women, they found they were descendants of crypto-Jews.
For anyone who might not know, what exactly does crypto-Judaism mean in this context?
Well, during the Inquisition in the late 1400s, Jews in Spain and Portugal were forced to convert to Catholicism. If they didn't, they were expelled or killed.
So many converted publicly,
But continued practicing Judaism in secret for centuries. They lit Sabbath candles in their basements. They kept kosher when no one was looking.
And to keep a secret like that for so long, you have to be incredibly insular. You only marry within your own community.
Exactly. And that insularity is what preserved the DNA. If they had just assimilated, that N1B1A2 signal would have been diluted into nothing. The fact that we find it there today, concentrated in these families, is biological proof of their story.
That's amazing. The Inquisition burned their records, forced them to change their names. It tried to erase their identity.
But it couldn't erase their mitochondria.
The DNA is a witness. It proves these families in Portugal were not originally old Christians, as the Inquisition called them. They are direct descendants of the women from the Near East.
It connects a grandmother in modern Portugal straight back to that palace in Megiddo.
Wow.
That is the definition of resilience.
Okay, so we've gone north and west into Europe. That's the path we kind of expect. But you promised a detour, a twist.
Yes. This is where we challenge the assumption that everyone just moved into Europe. We have to look south.
To Sudan.
Specifically to a site called Kulubnarti, which is located on the Nile River.
And the time period.
Medieval. Roughly 650 to 1000 CE.
Now, what's the context here? Is this an Islamic region at this point?
Not yet. This is the Kingdom of Makuria, a powerful, vibrant Christian kingdom that actually held off Islamic expansion from Egypt for centuries. It was a major player.
And in a cemetery there in Kulubnarti, they found our code.
They did, an individual carrying N1B1A2.
Why is that so surprising?
Because the local Nubian population had a very specific African genetic profile. This individual had that profile in their nuclear DNA, but their direct maternal line, their mitochondria, was this West Eurasian signal from the Near East.
So how does a lineage from the Levant end up in a Christian kingdom in Sudan?
Trade. The Nile was the superhighway of the ancient and medieval world. It connected the Mediterranean right into the heart of Africa.
So this might not have been a huge migration. It could have been just a merchant family?
Very likely, yes. Or a diplomat or a skilled artisan. We know there were Jewish and other Levantan communities in Egypt for millennia. It's very plausible this lineage moved south along those trade routes and integrated into Makurian society.
What I love about this is that it just breaks the binary. We think of lineages as European or Middle Eastern, but this says, no, I'm also African.
It shows that N1B1A2 wasn't just hiding in cellars in Portugal, it was also sailing down the Nile, intermarrying with Nilotic peoples, and becoming part of the fabric of medieval Sudan. It's a cosmopolitan lineage.
It really changes the picture you get when you just see that code on your report.
A narrative that spans 3 continents and thousands of years.
So let's try to synthesize this for everyone listening. If you're holding that report, what is the through line? We have the cave dwellers inventing home, the elites in Armageddon, the secret keepers in Portugal, and the traders in Sudan.
I think the word is adaptability.
Adaptability.
Think about it. This isn't a lineage of conquerors who went out and imposed their will. It's a lineage of people who found a way to thrive wherever they were. In the cave, they adapted to a whole new way of living sedentism. In the Bronze Age, they adapted to globalization by being the local anchor.
And in the Diaspora, they adapted to persecution by going underground, or to new opportunities by traveling down the Nile.
Precisely. It's a quiet strength. The strength of the survivor, the ability to hold on to who you are while the world completely changes around you.
And there's one more layer to this that I think we need to touch on.
What's that?
The intimacy of it all. History can feel so abstract. Wars, kings, dates. But this is different. Mitochondrial DNA is passed from mother to daughter, unbroken. The woman in that cave is not a metaphorical ancestor. She is your literal great-great-grandmother, about 500 times removed.
There is no break in that chain.
None. If just one woman in that line had not had a daughter, the code would be gone.
The fact that you're here to even read that report means that through the Ice Age, plagues, the collapse of empires, the Inquisition, every single woman in your line survived long enough to pass that torch.
That is a humbling thought. You are the current guardian of a 14,000-year-old flame.
And the question this deep dive leaves you with is, where does the line go from here?
Right. For 14,000 years, this code has been recording history. Now you're the one writing the next chapter.
Exactly. We've seen the Rakafet forager and the Megiddo elite, who's the 21st century link in that chain. That's you.
A little bit of pressure, but mostly a privilege.
Absolutely.
Well, I will certainly never look at a string of letters and numbers the same way again. From the caves of Carmel to the banks of the Nile, it has been quite a journey.
A pleasure to explore it with you.
And thank you for taking this deep dive into your own biology with us. We'll see you on the next one.